In your name we pray, amen. The main theme of my message today, it's very simple, and I'm hoping you remember this. Like if someone were to ask you on Tuesday, what did Rob talk about? Here it is. Lead like Jesus. Lead like Jesus. Now your first thought might be, well, Pastor, I'm not a leader. Yes, you are. What do I mean by that? One of my favorite authors on leadership, John Maxwell, he's written a ton of different books on leadership. If you've never written a John Maxwell book, you got to read one. They're all incredible. But he defines leadership in the most simple terms as saying leadership is influence. Leadership is influence. It's the ability to impact the thinking, behavior, or development of others. You don't need a position of leadership to be a leader. You can have influence over people, whether you're the leader or whether you're not the leader. If you walk through our lobby and you pick up a piece of trash and other people see that, you're a leader. And so if you're sitting there going, well, I'm not much of a leader. Yes, you are. You are a leader, and anyone can be a leader. I like how it says in Ephesians 4:11 through 12. It says, now these are the gifts Christ gave to the church, to the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, and the pastors, and the teachers. Their responsibility, so this is me, okay, as a teacher, pastor, my responsibility is to equip God's people to do his work and to build up the church, the body of Christ. So my job is to equip you to do his work, to be influential, to be a leader. So everybody repeat after me. I'm a leader. I'm a leader. Do it again. I'm a leader. I'm a leader. Okay, now you can hear my message, because otherwise, if you're like, I'm not a leader, then this message doesn't pertain to me. But you are a leader. Everyone's a leader. And today's message is lead like Jesus. Jesus gives us a clear model to follow, and it's so different. It's so backwards. It's so upside down from what we typically think of leaders. We're going to be reading a story that takes place at the end of Jesus' ministry. It's right after he raised Lazarus from the dead. If you remember that message from a few weeks ago, he raised Lazarus from the dead, and then he's making his way. He's getting closer and closer to Jerusalem, and he gives some clear instructions to just two disciples. He says, go up on ahead of us, and you're going to come into a city, and in the city, there's going to be a donkey that's tied up there. Grab the donkey and bring him back here. And if anybody asks you and says, where are you going with the donkey? Just say, the Lord needs it. Now, at first you're like, did Jesus just tell the two disciples to steal a donkey? Culturally, during the Passover for the Jewish culture and tradition, it was quite common for people to borrow things during this time. So it wasn't like Jesus instructed his disciples to just go steal a donkey. Just wanted to clarify that. But why does Jesus need a donkey? It's because there's a prophecy that happened 530 years before this event. A man named Zechariah got a word from the Lord, and we're going to read what he said in Matthew 21:5. It says, tell the people of Jerusalem, look, your king is coming to you. He is humble, riding on a donkey. That's radically different than the leadership of the day. Now, Romans, if they won a battle and if they had a triumphal entry where they came into a city, they got the biggest horse that they could get. They had big banners. They had a big parade. They had an army. It was this big, majestic, powerful thing where it was, look at me, I'm awesome. And Jesus is getting a donkey. It's radically different than what the time of the day. The picture for a Roman entry, it just reminds me of the movie Aladdin, if you've ever seen the Prince Ali, da, 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 with all the elephants and all the camels and all the, like, look at me, I'm awesome, I'm cool. Jesus doesn't do that. He does the opposite. He comes in on a donkey. Most of the crowd spread their garments on the road ahead of him, and others cut branches from the trees and spread them on the road. You may have been wondering, why are kids coming into our auditorium waving palm branches in the air? It's because today is Palm Sunday, and this is what the people were doing. They were cutting tree branches. They were getting their garments. They were throwing it on the road ahead of Jesus, celebrating Jesus. Palm branches were a sign of victory. They were a sign of peace. They were a sign of celebration. 164 years before Jesus, the Jews were under captivity from the Greeks. I didn't know this. This is new news to me. But 164 years before Jesus, the Jews were captive to the Greeks. And there was a guy named Judas Maccabeus who liberated Jerusalem from Greek rule in 164 BC. And the people used palm branches and they shouted things saying Hosanna as this guy beat the Greeks. And the reason I share that, the reason I tell that is because the Jews found themselves in captivity once again, but not captivity to the Greeks, but they were captivity to the Romans. And they thought that Jesus was going to free them from the Romans just like Judas Maccabeus freed them from the Greeks. They're like, here we go, it's repeat. Here comes another leader. Here comes another military guy. Here comes another political leader. He's going to free us from the Roman captivity. Let's get out the palm branches. Let's get our coats. Let's throw them in front of them. Let's celebrate that Jesus is here. They thought Jesus was going to free them from the Romans. The crowd went ahead of him, and those that followed him shouted, Hosanna. Everybody say Hosanna. I had to use a different version because the NLT doesn't have Hosanna. It translates it different. I'm like, we got to have Hosanna on Sunday. So it's the NIV, Hosanna, the Son of God, Son of David. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest of heaven. This statement was a common statement from Psalms 118, 25 through 26. And people would say it. And what does Hosanna mean? Hosanna means save us. Save us now. Over time, it became a term of praise. But they said, save us now, Hosanna, Hosanna in the highest, Son of David. What does the Son of David mean? Well, it means that Jesus is actually a bloodline to the King David. If you trace his genealogy from King David all the way to Jesus, which is important because there was a prophecy that said the Messiah was going to come from David's bloodline. And so they're shouting, Son of David. They were saying that Jesus was king. What they didn't know was that he wasn't just coming to save them from the Romans. He was coming to save them from sin and death, and not just the Jews, but the entire world. So what can we learn from Jesus in the story? How can we lead like Jesus? Well, we got to lead with humility. Humility, it's a powerful word, and it's talked about quite frequently, and we speak on it all the time. But what does it mean to be a humble leader? What does it mean to not be a humble leader? And what does it mean to be a humble leader? I'm going to start with what does it mean to not be a humble leader, what it isn't. Well, first, it isn't self-deprecation. If you're like, first thought is, oh, I'm a humble leader, that means I'm just going to talk down on myself. I'm just going to make myself look less cool, less good. There was a worship leader that I knew once. He was incredible. Like one of the best guitar players that I've ever seen. He could sing, and just when he was leading worship, the Spirit of God was moving and flowing. And you'd go up to him after church and you'd say, man, that was incredible. You are an incredible worship leader. And he'd go, no, that wasn't very good. It was terrible. It wasn't bad. Anybody know somebody like this where they're like self-deprecating? They're like, I'm going to talk myself down to be humble. Sometimes that's actually a form of pride because you're like, I'm just so humble too, I'm just humble. Sometimes you can be pride about how humble you are. It gets weird, but what does it mean, self-deprecation? True humility is grounded in confidence and self-awareness, not just self-deprecation. Jesus clearly embraces his role as the Messiah here. He sits on a donkey, which he knew was a symbol of him saying, I am the coming king. I am the Messiah, the one that's been written about. He fully steps into his mission that God was calling him to do. And we need to fully step into the mission that God has called us to do without pretending to be anything less. So what do we do when somebody compliments you? When somebody comes up to you and says, I really like this, or you did a really good job there. Here's what you do. You say, thank you. That's the most humble answer sometimes. Just say thank you. Humility also isn't being a pushover. Sometimes we're like, I'm just I'm just going to let people push me. No, humble leadership, humility isn't just being a pushover. There's so many people that are going to try to impose their will upon you. Maybe it's your parents, maybe it's your kids, maybe it's your boss at work, maybe it's your siblings, maybe it's your friends. I don't know, but a lot of their intentions are really good. And they have positive intentions, and they're maybe trying to even help you. But the only will that matters isn't the will of other people, it's the will of God. And people are going to try to push you around and get you to do their will all the time, constantly. Do this, do my will, do my will, do my will, do my will. No, I got to do the will of the Lord. Being a humble leader doesn't mean being a pushover. Now, there are times we need wise counsel, and we need to listen to people who are wanting to help us, but the only thing we need to be concerned about is the will of God. And what does he want us to do? There are some statements that you'll hear me say all the time around our church. The one that you'll hear me say frequently is, we got to have purpose over preference. Not just our own preference, because we got to put our own preferences down for God's purpose. We also got to put the preferences of other people down sometimes to get to the purpose of God. And so when people come into your life and they have a preference, you should do this, you should do that, you should do this. God's purpose always trumps our preference and other people's preferences. Another thing you'll hear me say frequently is the mission is greater than any one person's feelings or agenda. The mission is greater than any one person's feelings or agenda. Now we're gonna listen to people that come, but the mission, we're not gonna change what we're doing because sometimes we might, but we got a mission where we're trying to reach people. Another one that you'll hear me say frequently is we don't listen to they. We don't listen to they. Well, what does that one mean? That means that if you put a connection card, you can write anything you want on a connection card, and if you put your name on it, we will read it, we will listen to you. I'm gonna sit down and have a meeting with you. I'd love to do that. If your name isn't on it, whoosh, trash. Because I want to know whose name the feedback's coming from. But we don't listen to they. And even if you put your name on it, like I said, I'm not going to promise we're going to do your preference. What I am going to promise is we're going to seek the purpose of God. We're going to seek the will of God. And I think we have to do that, not just for our church, but for our own lives as well, because so many people have opinions on what we should do. While Jesus humbled himself, he wasn't passive. He didn't let the crowd's expectations distort his mission. I'm going to say that again. He didn't let the crowd's expectations distort his missions. Leading with humility isn't being a pushover, but it also isn't seeking constant approval. I say this all the time. Compliments are like perfume. A little goes a long way, but too much will kill you. I tell that to Ben, our worship leader, all the time. Because he's awesome. Jesus was praised. People were shouting, Hosanna, praise you. I'm going to grab my coat. I'm going to throw it down on the road in front of you. I'm going to get the palm branches. I'm going to save us. You're the king. And they were praising him. They were complimenting him. They were lifting him up. But just 1 week later, those same people were the same people shouting, crucify him. We can't live for the approval of other people because the crowd is fickle. The crowd changes its mind on a dime. If we live for people's compliments, we will die by their complaints. If we live for people's compliments, we will die by their complaints. Some of us so desperately want the crowd to like us. We want people to notice us. But the crowd is impossible to please. I'm going to be honest. Instagram, Facebook. When you post something, if you're like me, I have these little reels that I post, and I post it. And then I'm sitting there watching it. I'm like, how many views am I getting? How many people like it? How many people are thumbing up? How many people are commenting on it? And I get consumed with the posts that I posted on Instagram because I'm like, I hope people like it. There was a day I posted a video, and normally I get, overall 1,000 views or something on an Instagram video. I got 1,000 views in 5 minutes on a post I post. And I was like, Maggie, I'm going viral. This is awesome. And then like you see the graph and it just shoots up super fast, 1,000 views. And then the next 2 days, boop. plateaued, and I got like 1,500 views, which is normal. But I was so excited because I was going, we shouldn't care about that. We shouldn't care about how many likes we get on Instagram. That's so silly. But we do it, don't we? We get sucked in, and we're like, oh, did they like it? Did they comment on it? Do they think I'm cool? Do they like my shirt? We can't get sucked into it. True humility and leadership doesn't seek constant approval or validation from others. And being a humble leader, it's unpopular at times. Sometimes people actually won't like you because you're leading them where they don't know where they want to go, but they're glad they're there when they get there. Leadership is taking people where they don't know they want to go, but they're glad they're there when they get there. Humble leadership isn't about giving people what they want, it's about giving people what they need. Jesus isn't riding in Jerusalem giving people what they want. They wanted him to take out the Romans. They wanted to be freed. They wanted to rid themselves of the Roman oppression. But Jesus didn't give them what they wanted. He gave them what they needed. So leading with humility isn't choosing service over self-promotion. It's not being a pushover. It's not seeking constant approval. But what is humility in leadership? Humility in leadership is choosing service over self-promotion. Philippians 2:3-4 says this. Don't be selfish. Don't try to impress others. Be humble, thinking of others as better than yourselves. Don't look out for only for your own interests, but take an interest in others too. This was a moment for me last year. I went to a pastor conference, and it was talking about leadership, and the speaker from the stage got up and he was talking, and he said, as a pastor, do you work equally hard on your own messages that you work on training someone else who's giving a message? And I was like, no. He's like, real humble leaders pastors will work harder at helping someone else give a great message, more so than even working hard on giving their own message. And for me, it was this heart attitude check of like, am I getting up on stage just so people give me the claps and they like or would I work equally as hard at training someone else and helping someone else? And at the time, I had a youth pastor that worked for me. And so it was convicting because I spent a few minutes with him and I spent hours on my own messages. And I said, okay, I need to spend more time with him, helping him with his messages. It's choosing service over self-promotion. Humble leaders put the mission above their own desires of recognition for fame. Jesus didn't ride in on a golden chariot. He didn't ride in on a Corvette or a Ferrari. He came in on a donkey. Humble leadership is displaying confidence without arrogance. Romans 12:3 says it this way, because of the privilege and the authority God has given me, I give each of you this warning. Don't think you are better than you really are. Be honest in your evaluation of yourselves, measuring yourselves by the faith God has given us. It's okay to be confident. It's not okay to be arrogant. Those things are very different. Humble leaders can be confident in their abilities without arrogance or the need to elevate themselves above others. You know, our worship pastor, Ben, he's pretty awesome, and I'm going to give him some compliments here because he's awesome. Perfume, you know, the whole perfume thing. But Ben is an incredibly gifted worship leader, but he's also humble. And I'm like, okay, you're from Lapine, like your singing's awesome, your playing's awesome. I'm like, how are you not super prideful and cocky because you're really good at what you do? Like, and I asked him, I said, why are you so humble? He talked about Fine Arts Festival. He went to National Fine Arts Festival when he was in high school, and he competed at Fine Arts, and he said, Rob, when I sat in there, you sit in this room with the guys from all over the country that come here, and you quickly learn, yeah, I'm okay, you know. But it was a humbling experience for him because he realized he wasn't the coolest or the best sounding, but it gave him this experience so that he could be confident in who he was, confident in his abilities, but also humble, knowing that there's always going to be somebody better out there. And so I just want to lift him up and say Ben is awesome, because it's very rare to find someone of Ben's age, at the age he is, with the ability he has and the humility he has. It's incredible. When Jesus enters in Jerusalem, he does so with a quiet confidence, fully aware of his identity as the Messiah. True humility doesn't involve lacking confidence, but demonstrating it without pride or arrogance. Is there an area of your life where you need to be more confident in what God has made you to do? Is there an area of your life where you need to be more honest with yourself about your ability? Lastly, leading by example. Humility in leadership means we've got to be willing to do the hard work ourselves. We've got to be able to lead by example. There was a board member, we had our board meeting on Tuesday night. They came 3 hours early to the board meeting, and they said, anything you need done, we'll help you do it. And they showed up. I didn't really have much, so do you know what they ended up doing? Was going out and pulling weeds. How cool is that? That our board member is out there pulling weeds out in the garden. I love that. I love that. One of my mentors and leaders at my last church I was at, the lead pastor, Kevin Gear, he modeled what servant leadership looked like so well because he worked harder than anybody else on staff. He was incredible at showing up late, showing up early, staying late. I mean, he even served in the kids' church a few times just to model what people should be doing. I'm like, he couldn't do everything because he's one person and the church is a very large church. But I remember watching him and observing him and saying, man, that's the kind of leader that I want to be. I want to be the kind of leader that leads by example. And he was willing to, he wasn't able to do everything because he had a big church, but he was willing to do everything. And I think that was a huge key, that he was willing to do everything. That's the type of leader that I want to be. A few weeks ago, actually it was a few months ago, there was a huge mess in the bathroom. And I had a couple people come up to me and say, what are we going to do about it? At that point, I could have handed the mop to a staff member or handed the mop to a volunteer, but I grabbed the mop and I went and cleaned it up because that's the type of leader that I want to be. I want to be able to lead by example. This type of leadership is so backwards. It's so upside down from our natural, common way of thinking. What we think is, man, if I'm the boss, I get the cool parking spot. You think if I'm the dad, I get to have the TV remote. Am I preaching some conviction on somebody right now? If I'm the leader, I get to make all the decisions. That's not what leadership is about. The kingdom of God is so different. It's so upside down. It's not normal. The disciples, they had the same problems we do. And they went, one of the disciples' moms goes to Jesus. She says, can my son sit on your right and your left when you have your kingdom? She thought that he was going to have a kingdom that would take over the Romans. And she goes, when you become the king, can my son sit on your right and on your left? And the other disciples get mad that she asked the question. They get indignant and they go, what are you asking that question for? And so Jesus comes back with his response that just is incredible. And you've probably heard of the Great Commission before, but this is the Great Cultural Commission, the Great Leadership Commission, that if we can get this, it's gonna change our church, it's gonna change our houses, it's gonna change our community. And here it is. He said, Matthew 26 through 28, but among you, it will be different. Whoever wants to be a leader among you must be a servant. And whoever wants to be the first must become your slave. For even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve others, and to give his life as a ransom for many. So here we are on this Palm Sunday. Jesus could have come in riding in on a big chariot, but he chose to humbly come into town riding on a donkey, knowing full well that a week later, he would get hung on a cross. He would get tortured to death for you and for me. That's what leadership looks like. He's willing to give it all, to surrender everything for us. I love also how Jesus washes the disciples' feet. Super humiliating, humble act that he gets down on his hands. Right, the night before he goes to the cross, he washes the disciples' feet. What a humble picture for us. Jesus led by example. He was willing to give his life to die so all humanity could be saved. But I think it's bigger than that too. I think that if Jesus, if you were the only person on the planet, I believe Jesus would have still come and died for you. He loves you so much. And that's why he came riding in on a donkey. That's why he did what he did, was so that he could have a relationship with you. For those of us who have given our lives to Jesus, because he died for us, we can now choose to live for him. And this week, we got to lead like Jesus led. We got to apply these principles to our life. And when we lead this way, it's gonna change the world. And so just to review with you, humble leadership isn't self-deprecation. It's not being a pushover. It's not seeking constant approval. But humble leadership is choosing service over self-promotion, displaying confidence without arrogance, and leading by example. I'm gonna invite the worship team back up. If you wanna grab your connection card, if you didn't get one, we've got extras right here in the front. You can raise your hand. Kelly will come around, hand you one if you didn't get one of these. But we wanna invite you to fill one of these out each and every week. The answers, the responses do change. If you scan the QR code on the seat back in front of you, you can fill out the digital connection card as well. But this is just a real practical way that we can respond to the truth of God's word each and every week. And so I read all the connection cards. You can share, celebrate a win with us. You can share prayer requests on there, but we'd love to invite you to fill these out. The first one is, I choose to follow Jesus. I choose to follow Jesus. The second one is, I know I need to be a better leader. Maybe there's something that I said today that was inspiring. You said, you know what? I need to do this different. I need to lead this way differently. The third one is I want to be a humble leader like Jesus. I want to follow Jesus. And then the last one is, I'm so thankful for what Jesus did for me. Let's go ahead and stand up as we head back into just a time of